This podcast is part of E2C Network, where we share the whole Auburn experience.
War Eagle Auburn fans, welcome to No Huddle, your source for Auburn football news and discussion, part of the E2C Network. I'm AJ Richardson, and I'm also here with my buddy, Jared Davis. It's really exciting. We got to see some Auburn football against UMass. Jared, how you feeling after Auburn winning 59-14 over UMass?
I'm feeling pretty good. I mean, it's one of those games it's hard to take a lot away. It's hard to take a lot of anything away from it if you play well. If you play poorly, though, that's a pretty telling sign.
Yeah.
And we did not play poorly. So, that's a good thing. I think that basically means we're not terrible. And, we covered, right? I don't remember the spread.
Oh, yeah. The spread was 35.
Okay.
Yeah, we won by 45.
Okay. So we covered. That's good. And I heard somebody say, like, it didn't look like a struggle. Like, it seemed normal. It seemed like they were well coached.
Yeah.
Very few mistakes. And so, yeah, all in all, man, I'm pretty pleased. How are you feeling about it?
Pretty good, considering how many questions I had coming into it of offense, defense, and even special teams to some extent, even with special teams, but mostly offense and defense. And you saw a competent offense that was able to pass the ball when they wanted, and they could also run the ball, pretty much on command. And tons of people got handoffs, a ton of people got touches. It was amazing. I think somebody pulled together a stat and said 68 players got snaps on offense and defense, which is just crazy. Think about that. You got like roughly 100 guys on a team usually. And what is that? 70% almost of them got on the field at some point, which is just, again, crazy. But hey, this is the time to do it. We don't get a preseason. This is our preseason, more or less, which leads us into the next week of Cal. And that's going to be a tough road opponent all the way in California. I did want to talk about a few things, kind of big talking points here for this game. So obviously, first game under Hugh Freeze, it was a big success to get a win on his first game here. The stadium itself sold out 88,043, which is again going to be strange to say. I'm so used to the previous, only having 87,000 fans. So, I'm gonna have to get used to that for a minute. And then a few other things kind of in the stadium. I wasn't able to go. I was actually in Knoxville, doing a long weekend with my wife and some friends. But my siblings were able to go, and they were kind of noting some things in the stadium that I wanted to point out for those that weren't able to go. We were suspecting, think about freeze and all the freezes coming and all that kind of stuff going on. Well, they did a lot of that. My siblings were like, it was amazing, all the different ways that they were able to kind of incorporate that into graphics on the Jumbotron or just everything in the videos that they were showing. So I thought that was neat. Well done there. And then, of course, the whiteout. So, again, a freeze. It just fit with this whole kind of getting Hugh Freeze going. There's tons of fan support, as you can tell. Just a good way to start everything out. As far as the game overall, Jared, there were a handful of things that I, even as a fan, were just like, well, that went pretty well. But then there were some things that, that we could improve on. Like I noticed very early on, it seemed like UMass was running the ball and doing it very effectively. Their quarterback was doing so. We made some adjustments. Also, it kind of helped Auburn that I think their quarterback got banged up a little bit. So he wasn't as mobile anymore. But either way, you kind of start out all right on defense, and then you kind of transition into really from that point on only allowing 7 points, and that was kind of in junk time towards the end of the game. What were some of the positive, big picture things that you saw from this team in this game?
I think it was, I don't know, man. I just feel like it's been a long time for us to be able to bring in our backup quarterback pretty early on in the second quarter.
Yep.
And we got our third string quarterback in. You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, Holden Geriner even came in. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like we've played these teams, and I hate to keep going back. I mean, I loved Gus, but even in like 2017, we barely put Mercer away that game. I mean, I just feel like hasn't been a ton of games where we've literally put them away, control from start to finish. And you're right, outside of that first drive they had, which scared me. I even
Yeah.
saw a comment from Zach Etheridge. It scared them a little bit too. It outside of that game was never in doubt, and I just don't know that we've had a ton of those lately. So I was impressed with that. And you and I were talking before, and I know you brought this up, and it's a great point. The vanilla offense. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
we didn't really do a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very
It
basic.
honestly felt like we ran maybe 25 plays and we just ran them and multiple times. Like it felt like we were just kind of doing the same thing, and because it's UMass, we were able to do them well, even if UMass knew what was coming, just because we have the talent that's just so much better than UMass. So, that's something good. To start out, there's so much that even Hugh Freeze has alluded to on offense, and I'm sure the defense as well is kind of holding back on. Like you don't want to show all your cards in the very first game against a nobody opponent, and that's something good. Again, like we're taking this in, we're trying to figure things out. Even the coaching staff is trying to figure out things. How to coach the players during a game. They've got a lot of practice now in practice coaching these players, but how do they react in a game? And even I think Hugh Freeze, it was kind of interesting about coaching Peyton Thorne. Peyton Thorne made a wrong decision, and then Hugh Freeze on the sideline yells at him, and he's like, "What the heck are you doing? Come on, you know better than that. You shouldn't have made that decision." Next play, Peyton Thorne makes another mistake, and it was kind of cool to see like Hugh Freeze and his frame of reference and thought process, which again, coaches do this. They're adjusting to the players and how they react. Like every player isn't great at getting yelled at. Some players react really well to that, but some may not. Some may need just like that gentle nudge of like, hey, that might not have been the right thing to do. And you know what? That was kind of cool to see, even from Hugh Freeze. And I'm sure a lot of that's going on because new coaching staff, there's I think 38 new players on this team that weren't on it last year. They're still trying to figure things out. So considering all of those moving pieces, I'm very pleased that Auburn is at a spot at this point. After game one, now we can prepare for Cal and look forward to a good opponent in Cal, and not be, in my mind, as worried as I was coming into UMass, just because of all the question marks of offense and defense. A couple other just kind of minor things that I noted, and I don't know if you noticed these. The captain patch, and this was something that our buddy Clint Richardson pointed out, was for the 4 captains on Auburn team. It was slightly changed. Now it's just kind of it looks like a white C on their jersey instead of like a bright orange patch on their jersey. So it blends in a little bit more. And so honestly, I like that. Um, Again, the captains are going to stand out anyway. It's not like you have to add a little flashy little patch to them to make them stand out. One other thing, and Jared, I was super pumped about this one. Rolling tumors. Players got to roll it. Coach Freeze got to roll it. Obviously, the fans got to roll it. How cool was it to finally have tumors back? Like actually rolling the tumors trees and not the ones just around it. How great is that?
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, that's what Auburn's known for. Man, it's been such a long time since that happened. What was that, like 2010?
Yeah.
It's nice to have those back and to see, Coach Freeze, get up there and do that. I mean, listen, I know Freeze has a past, and there was people that question the hire, but as far as the buy-in to Auburn, like I don't know if there's anybody in the country that would have bought in to Auburn as much as Hugh Freeze has.
Right.
I mean, it was almost like Harsin had to be, coached a little bit by Bruce Pearl to get out and be with the fans and stuff, and it just always seemed awkward. Like Freeze enjoys that stuff. Like that's
Yeah.
what he wants to do. And so yeah, it was cool to see him up there doing that. He did. Did you see where Jalen Simpson? He had the interception,
Oh,
and
yeah.
did you read the article or whatever, or hear Freeze?
Yeah, I saw that.
Okay, well, Freeze basically said, for anybody that didn't, Freeze told him that, hey, look, you can dance all you want, but it's got to be over here on the sideline, not in the end zone, because he didn't want to get penalties. And then Simpson made a promise he'll wait till he gets to the sideline if Freeze will dance with him.
Yep.
And so he taught Freeze a dance this week, and it was brutal. I mean, and even
It
Freeze
wasn't
said,
good.
it wasn't good. Freeze even said he's sure he messed the whole thing up, but it was funny to see Simpson find him after the pick six, and they do their little dance.
I love it. I mean, that's the kind of things. I mean, think back to Gus Malzahn after a big win. I know Gus isn't a big dancer, but he loved the hammer fist thing where he'd go boom, and the
Yeah,
guys loved it.
yeah.
It's not even like really a dance move, but like that's what
It
Gus
got everybody
did.
going. Oh yeah.
It did. And you gotta love that from I mean, Hugh Freeze obviously very relational with how he's recruited. And anywhere he's been, he's very relational with any of his players. Like he knows their names, he knows their mom and dad, he knows their background. And that's the kind of stuff I think is going to make a little bit more of an impact. I mean, you heard, from the previous coaching staffs, particularly with Harsin, that he just like kind of cold. Like he didn't try to like make relationships. He was just like, I'm gonna coach my team and coach it well. But you got to make the relationships. You got to kind of make them feel like they're welcomed and feel like they belong. And you can tell Hugh Freeze is getting on that. Like he knows that's the difference. And I can almost guarantee you, I'm thinking about, not only is Hugh Freeze already starting that, but Cadillac. He was that bridge that helped us, and that's a big reason why I think this is continuing under Hugh Freeze. Let's talk about the offense. I mean, we talked about it being kind of vanilla. I saw a little bit of chatter, which I thought was kind of funny, but I wanted to get your input. Should Robbie, because he scored 3 touchdowns, be our starting quarterback? I want to get that discussion going. What's your thoughts?
Negative. I think what Robbie does. I think the way we used him is the way we need to continue to use him. I think he will be a vital part in our offense. But I actually was very pleased with Thorne. I think he made a lob throw to Fair for a touchdown that we've been missing those. He made a back shoulder throw to Shane Hooks. He made a high and outside pass to where only Javarius Johnson could catch it down the left sideline at about the 5-yard line. He made a few throws that we haven't had since Jarrett Stidham, in my opinion. And Bo Nix is a more athletic quarterback than Stidham and Thorne combined. I mean, but Bo Nix didn't make those throws. And so I was watching that. And look, I know Thorne made a couple of mistakes, right? But even just looking at his composure, like he was never rattled. He has a great feel for the pocket. I know it was UMass, but there were times he stands in there. He's not nervous. And then when it's time to move because the pocket collapses, he felt it and he moved.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Like there was no jitterness. It just like the guy gets it, man. And I was super. He overthrew somebody. He threw one that might have been a pick in an SEC game. So that he's not perfect right now, but the throws he made and that confidence, man, I was pretty excited.
Yeah, I would agree because the amount of good decisions that Peyton Thorne made in this game were pretty good, considering he has only been on campus for like 2.5 months, really, playing with these guys. And you could tell the connection and chemistry with the wide receivers, understanding the playbook, everything from that perspective was going well. And I see why Peyton Thorne is our starting quarterback. And I'm also very happy to see that Robbie, at least even in this game, I heard the nickname on the commentators, and I think it's sticking, is Red Zone Robbie, which I think is at least somewhat accurate. We'll see, obviously, how the season plays out and different opponents, but Robbie was very effective in the red zone. I mean, that's just an extra guy you got to cover, and guess what? Robbie is accurate enough to pass it, so you have to respect his arm. So there's lots of good things to kind of play off of with the quarterback battle. And for goodness sakes, like you mentioned, third quarterback, Holden Gardner comes in there. Holden actually has the best QBR of this game. He was 2 for 2 with a couple really incredible passes to Malcolm Johnson Jr., back shoulder passes, and you see why everybody says he has the best arm on the team. And that was definitely showcased in this game.
Yeah, and I want to be real clear because my initial comment was not to knock Robbie at all. I think Robbie's amazing. I mean, the one where he broke down and he beat the guy to the front corner of the end zone.
Yep,
When
and
he
like
dove
dove in. Yeah.
He's just so athletic, man. He's such a weapon. But as far as who is our quarterback and who should be, I saw nothing that would say Thorne should not be that. He was even a little mobile. Now he's no Robbie Ashford,
but he was like
he
adjusted for sacks. I saw somebody said he was averaging like 8 to 9 yards per carry.
Yeah, I mean the play where he felt the pocket collapse, rolls out to his left and finds Shane Hooks, trailing him to the sideline and hits him on the run. I mean, that's a big time play.
Yeah, and that's gonna be, if he can do that in an SEC game, that's gonna be a drive sustainer and probably leading your team to a touchdown kind of play.
Yeah, it was a great play. But he ain't gonna win the Heisman. But I was really all in with this. It was more about just the composure.
So you're already bashing my hot take on Peyton Thorne.
I mean, I guess theoretically he could. I didn't want people to be like, "Oh, you're just loving on Peyton." I'm not loving on Peyton. I couldn't care less. Who's quarterback. I just was very pleased with the composure, very pleased with a back shoulder throw, very pleased with the throw to Javaris Johnson where only he could get it. And the floater to Fair, man, we've been over and throwing those for about 5 years now, and we did not.
Yeah. And part of the credit to all these quarterbacks being successful was just the overhaul on the offensive line. I mean, 4 of the 5 guys that came out at the beginning, I know Hugh Freeze doesn't like to call them starters, but whatever. We're going to call them starters for this podcast. Those are new guys. They've never played at Auburn, or at least started at Auburn. Only one of them had. And yet they got good push when they're running the ball and gave great pass coverage to any of the quarterbacks. And that's just so refreshing. And it just shows you what you can do under a capable offensive line. It just gives the quarterbacks that much more confidence in what they can do.
Yep.
And shout out to Gunnar Britton, one of the offensive linemen. He was named SEC Offensive Lineman of the Week. So that was awesome to see. He played in 3 different positions on the offensive line this game and allowed no pressures, which, again, is amazing.
That's awesome.
So let's also talk about running backs. I mean, we knew running backs were going to be key for this season. We have them as one of our biggest strengths. Jarquez was still out. Damari Alston, Brian Battie, Jeremiah Cobb, Sean Jackson even got in there. Justin Jones got in there. You just love to see all those different guys. And we knew we had a very deep running back room, but I think it was just showcased that we literally went, what is that, like 6, 7 deep kind of in our running back room. And yet we're still, every single one of them, very capable. I know it's UMass. I don't care. They're running the ball and they're running it very well. The one that really surprised me was Sean Jackson in the fourth quarter. I mean, he's a huge guy. Like, he looks like your prototypical, like, fullback, like Jay Prosh, like, huge guy. And yet he hit the top speed and beat out some of the UMass players. You're like, that's so cool. I love that. So any of the running backs that kind of stood out to you this game for this team, at least so far?
Yeah, I mean, they all did really well. You hit on the point on that. But I'm not going to lie. Somebody put this somewhere, and I was like, I went back and watched it, and they're right. That run by Jeremiah Cobb, it could have been Jarquez Hunter running that. I mean, the way he controlled his body, like the movement. Jarquez is a little thicker probably, but if you go back and watch that play, the way he read the hole, the way he contorted his body so that guy coming across doesn't take his legs out. I mean, if you didn't tell me and you said that, I mean, if you said that's Jarquez, I wouldn't have questioned you and I would have moved on.
Yeah.
And that was promising because if you have 2 Jarquez's on the team, that's pretty good. Now, Damari Alston, Batee, who's our fourth guy you mentioned?
Sean Jackson. Yeah.
Jackson. They all did great. I mean, they all did great. But the one thing that stood out was just how much Cobb looked like Jarquez.
Yeah, I loved it. And you can tell Damari Alston, I mean, not to take anything away from him, he's going to be, in my mind, if it's not either Brian Battie or Jeremiah Cobb, I mean, Damari Alston is just going to be right there too. Again,
Yeah, man,
you've literally got four that I think are fantastic SEC type running backs. Just a couple of them are really young, and young running backs can do some things that you may not necessarily want, but very promising.
I think Damari had over 5 yards of carry. I mean, he didn't do anything wrong. It just Cobb kind of looked like, oh, okay, maybe this is the real deal.
Exactly. And then they even had a walk-on, I think he's a walk-on, Justin Jones from Bessemer, get in there. So again, just kind of showing you lots of different players. Wide receivers, my goodness, how refreshing is it also to see wide receivers catch the ball when they're past it? I mean,
yes,
seemed like that was the big issue last year and the year before that.
Especially since they've kind of been poor mouthed. I mean, there's may have been one or two practices that coach said they did well, but I think Freeze's standard of well for a receiver is pretty high. That's kind of what he's known for. So
yeah,
yeah, I was very pleased. And like I said, the back shoulder throw stuff, that's as much of a receiver when he succeeds as it is a quarterback. They got to know it's coming. They got to stop and position properly.
Mm-hmm.
And what about Jay Fair? I mean, he's only a true sophomore, and he's essentially taking over Javarius Johnson's starting role. Although JJ was able to come in and make some catches too, but Jay Fair, you heard about it. That's one thing you never know when you hear camp about, oh, this guy's doing really good. It very rarely pans out. But I've been hearing for about a month now how Jay Fair is basically forcing them to put him on the field.
Well, and it was very evident. Very
obvious,
evident.
Yeah.
Like every play, I mean, I have a note, and I was just making this observation. He's at least for this game, was our top receiver.
Yeah. He was our go-to
the quarterback. Yeah, quarterback just knew where he was and connected well with him. You do still have Javarius Johnson, who probably them two are probably going to be, at least it sounds like, going to be our top receivers. And if that ends up being the case, I am all for that. That was pretty interesting to see Malcolm Johnson Jr., who's really been hurt, I think, all fall camp, come out, and then Holden makes those two beautiful passes to him. He just looks amazing. And if he can be also kind of that, maybe a deep ball threat, man, you got some really good wide receivers out there. And again, Hugh Freeze is going for those bigger wide receivers. And even like tight ends like Rivaldo Fairweather, that you could just tell they are big guys out there, and they need to be on the field and are going to make really big plays. And a lot of that, gets me exciting for the passing game, which I haven't been excited for a passing game in a very long time. It feels like I've just been like, I get excited about the run game and then almost kind of forget about the passing game.
Shane Hooks is a big target, and he was thrown to about 4 or 5 times, I think. So he made a couple of grabs. If we can, I think he might have been 50% on catches that thrown his way. If we can pick that up a little bit, he's a big body.
Mm-hmm.
I know a pass went to Camden Brown, but I think it was overthrown. Yeah, I mean, all in all, we got some options, probably more than we have had in the past. So it'll be interesting to see how it pans out. But Jay Fair was the guy you've been hearing about, and at least in the first game, there's good reason you were hearing about him.
Yeah. And then even I was noticing it, for a wide receiver or tight end, especially tight ends, you have to block really well as well. But I was noticing a lot of the wide receivers during the game making some big blocks on some of those bigger touchdown runs. Those wide receivers were getting out there lead blocking when our running back got to the second level. And that's exactly what you want to see out of your wide receivers. It's a big success, reason for success when it comes to anything in the run game.
AJ, we basically, I know we got to move on. Essentially, we just looked well coached.
I know, right?
That's really what it boiled down to. And I hate to say it, but we for sure went 2 years without looking that way, and
Mm-hmm.
towards the end of Augustus, it was game by game. So we
Yeah.
just looked well coached in most facets, minus the first drive for UMass. Outside of that, there was very few things that happened. Our special teams. I
Yeah.
mean, we had great blocking on returns.
Yeah.
Everything looked well done.
Returns were beautiful. And my player to watch was Brian Battie on some returns, and sure enough, on those
He's gonna break
returns,
one.
I mean, he was so close already.
Yeah.
And
he's
he was
gonna
like
bust one.
5 yards, like the first one, he was 5 yards deep in the end zone. I'm like, did coach okay you to run that out?
I was thinking the same thing. And then he got out to the 30 or 40 yard line. So
Yeah, right. Love it.
every aspect looked well done.
Exactly. And really defense as well, besides, like you mentioned, that one drive of UMass. I mean, once we got kind of a grasp on UMass, made some slight adjustments, and we were able to limit Tyson Pumachan and UMass doing very minimal. It felt like they were kind of going 3 and out, or maybe getting a first down here or there, and then
or turnovers.
That was about it.
What about turnovers?
Oh,
we haven't had those in forever. I mean, I can't tell you the last time we intercepted a pass and took it to the house. I mean,
I know.
Yeah.
And then the strip sack. So you got both of those things. And kind of another kind of side piece of this, and this is something I want to keep watching out for under Ron Roberts' defense. He was blitzing some of the cornerbacks, and that was working. I mean, I want to see if that works against an SEC opponent. But like guys like Donovan Kaufman, he rushed the quarterback 5 times this game, and 4 of those times ended up working. It rushed the quarterback, something happened. That's some great numbers. If you could just send somebody like Donovan Kaufman or DJ James or something like that, this is going to be a beautiful thing. Kind of as a, maybe not show the blitz, but actually bring the pressure. That's just exactly what you want.
What do you think Kaufman graded out Pro Football Focus?
Kaufman, I mean, it has to be really high, like in the 80s.
Yes, and just keep in mind we have very few players that were in the 80s at all last year. He was in the 90s. So he played 20 snaps. He rushed the quarterback 5 times. He got to him twice and forced 2 hurts. So 4 of the 5 times he impacted the play.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think he graded out like a 93 or something, which for the listener that may not know, Pro Football Focus is pretty hard. It's hard to grade out in the 90s.
Yes.
And he did. So.
Yeah, definitely a big something to look forward to with Donovan Kaufman. Still a little bit, and I know it's UMass, but still kind of trying to figure out the linebacker situation. I will say this: Eugene Asante was our leading tackle with 6 tackles, had tackle and a half, tackle for loss, and then even got a half of a sack. So, things like that really start, establishing your defense is once you kind of figure out your linebacker room. And it sounds like Eugene is one of those guys that they might just start kind of building this defense around them. Let's also talk just very briefly about Alex McPherson. He had 8 point after attempts. All of them went through. Had 1 field goal, I think, from 37 yards. He did have 1 kickoff that went out of bounds, which I feel like
I don't even know. Did it even go 10? It was not a good kick.
That was so mesmerizing to me. I mean, that shouldn't happen, obviously, but it did. So maybe you can figure something out there. All right. Any other final thoughts about the UMass game? I know that lots of fun stuff. This is a good win, and we're moving forward to Cal next week. Any other final thoughts before we get out of here?
Not really, man. We kind of talked about it. Just looked like a very well coached in every phase of the game. So excited about it. Let's see what happens next week against Cal.
Yeah, and that'll be our first, in my mind, kind of true test. So join us back a little bit later. We'll be doing a preview show for the Cal game, and that's going to be a late one. I'm a late night owl, but I might even have to get a nap Saturday to keep me going because that's going to be late on the East Coast.
Very, very late.
Alrighty. Jared, how can the people stay in touch with you?
You can connect with me on Facebook under my name, Jared Davis.
And you can find me on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it, at AJYJY_. It's always great to be an Auburn Tiger and War Eagle.
War Eagle.
Thank you for tuning in to today's episode on the E2C Network. On your way out, I want to remind you to stop by e2cnetwork.com. It's your one-stop shop for all our content across our podcast, YouTube channel, and much more. To stay up to date with us, make sure you're following social media accounts such as Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. While our content here may always be Auburn sports heavy, if it's orange and blue, it's what we do. War Eagle.